Hey everyone, welcome back to Cincinnati Zoo Tales. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Mark. Thanks to all of our listeners for tuning into yet another episode. Incredible episode today, Jenna. We've got a fantastic story of a little known bird that listeners probably don't know a whole lot about. We're excited to teach you about this bird, tell you how Cincinnati Zoo got involved with it, and to help tell that story, we're being joined by Aimee Owen. Aimee's a senior keeper on our aviculture team. She works in the birdhouse. Bird expert over here. So Jenna, you know I'm a bird nerd. I'm hyped for this one. But Aimee, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to come over and chat with us.
Yeah, sure thing. I'm really excited to be here.
That was a good intro, Mark.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I've been working on my
You changed it up
intros.
a
I gotta
little
step
bit.
my game up.
It seemed pretty professional.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad I don't have that job. It's a lot. But yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to hear about what you're doing with these sihek birds, and also known as Guam Kingfishers, and everything that is going on with conserving them right now and how the zoo's involved. But start off by telling us a little bit about you, how you became a zookeeper.
Wild times. I have a degree in wildlife biology, so this has kind of always been a direction I was planning to go. Kind of finishing my degree program, I kind of was lost on what I wanted to do. So I started applying for some internships, big cat stuff, like who actually wants to do that, right? I applied to the internship here at the zoo, and I got the phone call, and I was invited to come spend the summer in Cincinnati. Lucky for me, Jenna was here as well. We got to spend the summer, our first summer in Cincinnati together.
Oh, I didn't realize you two interned together.
Literally
we
in
lived
the
together.
same room.
We stayed in the same room.
At the intern house.
No way.
It was a riot. It was
Amy's
good.
my first friend here.
We went grocery shopping the first day we got here. Yeah.
We're like, skip the parties. We're going grocery shopping.
We're going grocery shopping. We got to eat here. No, that was that summer was kind of springboard into so many opportunities. I think Jenna can say the same thing, obviously, because we're both still here. I came here initially. I wanted to work with primates, with gorillas.
Oh, interesting.
So I did, at that time, our internship was split, kind of half days. So I did primate center in the mornings, and they said since that was your first choice for the afternoon, you can either work in the birdhouse or in horticulture. And I was like, I'm not going to be planting plants all summer. That's not what I came here for. So I did, stick it out with the birdhouse. I always tell people ask, how'd you get into birds? I was like, I got stuck here. I had zero interest in birds when I arrived. So, but I ended up continuing my internship through the fall, even living, across the street like a nerd. Long story short, they couldn't get rid of me. I did a short bout at the primate department for I was covering maternity leave, and then worked in our zoo nursery for about a year. And a job opened up in birdhouse, and I was ready. I was waiting. Yeah, never looked back. They couldn't get rid of me. Now I would literally never leave. So it's been a ride. But I've just learned so much from the keepers that I've worked with, from all the opportunities that I've had for travel and networking and things like that. So it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. I mean, obviously it also pays the bills, but
yeah.
But it's really been a ride for sure. So
What do you think changed your mind about birds? Was it just you had fun in that department with the people? Was it something about caring for birds that you like better than there's different types of husbandry for
absolutely
different types of animals.
That was a big thing. So the team at Birdhouse, which a lot of it is still the same, and the team was huge. It was open arms, it was open conversation. Another big thing with birds in our bird department is you can share space with anything. Mm-hmm. So as an intern, hey, run upstairs and go feed penguins. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? I can do that? They're like, yeah, get out of my face, kind of thing. So just being able to kind of jump in to things was really, really big. And as an intern, we're there for veterinary stuff. We're learning restraint techniques and things of that nature. Also, as an intern, I learned to feed babies, which was huge. That's not something every intern gets to do, but I showed up, and people were pleased with my performance and that kind of thing, and really trusted that I could manage that. So I actually learned to tube feed, gavage feed lorikeet chicks. So 2 and 3 week old lorikeet chicks with no feathers, their eyes aren't open, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where my nursery stuff started with birds. And then towards the end of my internship, we had a blue-breasted kingfisher chick hatch that we were hand rearing in our nursery, and absolutely fell in love with kingfishers to begin with. That was kind of, like I said, springboard. That was kind of like off the deep end. Yep, here we are. We're doing it. Kingfishers for life, right? So that was huge. Just the availability to jump into skills that you kind of have to work for a long time for elsewhere in other departments, kind of thing. So it worked out really well, and it was just it was amazing. It was awesome. So
what was that kingfisher's name?
BB.
All I could think was B, and I could
BB
not go.
Kingfisher. She was an absolute. She was an absolute mess, but she was wonderful, and she was an excellent experience. As far as this learning the skills, like I said, that part of it was. She loved people. She wanted to be around people, and which is not typical of kingfishers. So it was kind of easy to fall in love with her too. So.
That's awesome. I always love those stories when keepers get involved in an area of the field that they had no idea they were interested in or that they would fall in love with. Those are some of the most fun stories because it happens like organically, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe it was BB Kingfisher for you. I wanted to ask though, was there like a specific bird that like stole your heart and like really pulled you in, or that you really hold fond memories of?
She was a big one. Hornbills are another of my favorites. They kind of stay neck and neck at the top there. But we had a rhinoceros hornbill. She actually worked, when I worked in nursery quarantine, zoo nursery quarantine, this rhinoceros hornbill, Dolores, came through quarantine. She was actually named for, I'll just say it, she had actually unalived a male hornbill at another zoo, so we named her Dolores after Dolores Claiborne, the famous Stephen King character.
Wow.
So but she was so like I said, she went through her quarantine period when I worked in quarantine, and then we kind of came to the birdhouse at the same time, so I could just kind of continue working with her, and the hornbills are just everything. They're just really, really great. They're super smart. But my favorite thing about hornbills, they're like the ultimate team player. Female hornbills will actually mud themselves inside of a tree cavity with the eggs and then hatch the chicks and that kind of thing. Dad is on the outside feeding himself, feeding mom, feeding the kids. Everything's on him. If he gives up or decides, whatever, I'm tired, I'm worn out today, there are huge risks to that family unit. So that's just one of my, just fiercely loyal to their family and to their process, that kind of thing. So that's just always been one of my favorite things about them is they're kind of hateful sometimes too. So I dig it.
They're definitely a charismatic species too. They're so pretty. Their calls are like unlike anything else. I love when you're walking through a birdhouse or something, you get to hear them call every now and then. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we can tell by listening to you, you love birds and you love your job, but you've been doing something that's really like a passion project, I'm sure, and something that's really, really important to the literal world or this species. Mm-hmm. So tell us about the siheks and a little bit about what they look like and their natural history first.
Mm-hmm. So the sihek, like you said, Guam Kingfisher, sihek is the indigenous people of Guam, called the Chamorro people. Same name for their language as well. So sihek is the Chamorro name for the Guam Kingfisher. So AZA is kind of attempting to kind of slide towards using that kind of very colloquial name for them with those guys and the Guam rails, which is another species that we work with here. So they are very similar to our native belted kingfishers, which you can see right here in Hamilton County. They're a small bird. I call them murder babies because they're the ultimate predator. Like they're the tiniest little thing, 60-ish grams in total. But the second they see movement, it's like, you're dead. Gotcha. Here at the zoo, they eat a whole lot of insects, live insects, and things of that nature. One of their biggest prey items, though, biggest as in most important, is lizards. That's here or in their native Guam historically. So they get they eat brown anoles here, so they're kind of very much a motion oriented predator species. Contrary to their name, kingfishers, they're part of the kingfisher family. They're actually considered what's called tree kingfisher, so they don't actually fish for anything.
Oh, okay.
They obviously use water just like any other bird would. They bathe in it and get hydrated and that kind of thing, but they don't do any fishing. So that's kind of a goofy thing about them. There are actually a variety of kingfishers that are not. They don't fish.
That's interesting. I figured every kingfisher species fish. That's
right.
interesting.
Our belted kingfishers are absolutely very much a water-oriented, fish-oriented predator, but the Guam kingfishers are not.
What color are they?
The males are, so like I said, they're a tiny little guy.
So full grown 60 grams.
Full
not
grown
the baby
60-ish grams,
Wow,
correct.
That's tiny.
Correct. That's why I said murder babies. They're tiny little things. But so they are kind of brightly colored. So they have orange, like a kind of rusty orange on their face, and the males have the rusty orange kind of all the way down their chest and their belly. The females are white in the belly, but then on their back and on their wings, and they also have some kind of eye stripes here. They're like this gorgeous, like deep turquoise color, which is just you see it and you're like, how is this even natural? Like they look painted to me. So another cool thing about the way that they look. So the order of birds that they're a part of, they're called Carassiformes, which don't remember it. It's fine. If you don't. But one of the defining characteristics of that order is they have a disproportionately large head. So that's
they do look lopsided.
They look lopsided, like their head and beak looks about the same size as the rest of them. So if you think of a kookaburra, a laughing kookaburra, kookaburras are basically a large kingfisher species. So similar body shape, similar proportions, just in tiny little form, 60-gram form. So their chicks, when they hatch, they come out, they're called altricial species, so they come out featherless, eyes closed. I use the term lovingly, completely useless. They're not capable of doing anything on their own. They can barely stand up or hold their head up. I kind of more equate it to like the way we think of a human baby. You know, you have to kind of do everything for them. You have to support their heads and that kind of thing. We don't support their heads, they lay in a nest. But so they come out, like I said, completely naked. But the process of growing those feathers is lightning fast. You would be shocked at a week old kingfisher chicks they're starting to grow feathers. Like you can see feather tracks along their back, on their heads, and that kind of thing. And their eyes are starting to open about that time as well. But they are still underneath parents, keeping warm and that kind of thing. But birds in general develop very quickly to get to whatever mode of transportation, that's the way I like to word it, they will get to. So either flight or penguins, feathers, swimming, that kind of thing. So they develop very quickly to get to that point.
They really are just stunning birds when you see them. Like, I like that you kind of describe them as like almost artificial. They look fake. Something like this shouldn't exist in nature.
Right.
They're beautiful.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That turquoise color, it's just like, what in the world?
But visitors cannot see them if they come here, correct?
Unfortunately, we don't have them in a public space for visitors to see. We have done the blog post, and we've got some kind of photos in and around the birdhouse of kind of highlighting some different projects that we've worked on. But unfortunately, we don't have them in a public space for visitors to view. I would love to change that one day if anybody's listening to the podcast. But, that's kind of where we're at. Kingfishers in general are very secretive, very quiet species. So I would think that potentially if we're planning to keep in the program and with this project, they probably won't. At least a breeding pair wouldn't be visible to the public, which stinks because they're amazing.
But it brings us to the topic of today. I mean, these birds are the topic, but the project that you just mentioned, there is a reason they're behind the scenes.
Yes.
And because the birds that we do have are very important, and you mentioned they're secretive, and it's what's best for them right now.
Yes.
So, if you don't mind telling us about, I guess, what happened in Guam, or what the reason that we have this project to begin with, and then how the project's going and what it is.
Yeah. So the Guam Kingfisher from the island of Guam, which is U.S. territory, in the kind of mid 40s to early 50s, on probably what we think cargo ships, the brown tree snake was introduced to the island of Guam. And has since wreaked havoc on bird species, bat species, lizard species, all the native endemic species of Guam. That's a pushy word, but a lot of the species of Guam. So the brown tree snake, it is a venomous snake from parts of Southeast Asia. So it's native somewhere, and it's doing what it's supposed to do somewhere else. But in this accidentally introduced situation, it became a really significant problem. A lot of the forest birds of Guam were not accustomed to a predator of this type. There were almost no predators, so it was kind of natural selection types of things, like finding resources and things like that. That would be what the birds would be dealing with. But with this introduced predator, eggs were destroyed, nestlings were eaten. The brown tree snake is big enough to take out an adult kingfisher as well. And them being so secretive and so protective, and they're also in a nest cavity that's like maybe the size of a cell phone, they've kind of got nowhere to go if they're trying to be protective. So it's a situation where they're being such good parents, such good birds, such good stewards for their species, that the brown tree snake was just able to annihilate the population. And as far as the population of other things too, so there were at one point in time 12, I believe, different forest species, endemic forest species of birds on the island of Guam. Today, 2 of them still exist.
Wow.
There are other islands where they've kind of set up very, very small populations. But for the most part, the birds of Guam are just have suffered immensely. And it for lack of a better term, it sucks. Like, it's a terrible situation any way you spin it. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of bat species were targeted. A lot of herp species, lizards and amphibians and things of that nature. So that also means a lot of the prey of the kingfishers as well. So even if the kingfishers were able to do something to combat this issue, most of their prey was also decimated. So it sucks. It just sucks.
Yeah,
we haven't really talked about invasive species, I don't think, on any episodes much, but it's just, or introduced species, invasive, like a species of something, plant or animal, that somehow gets to an area where it never used to live, never has lived, and doesn't fit in the ecosystem there. It can just do a lot of damage. And unfortunately, just through, I guess, history and people traveling to different places and bringing new things to new places, like you mentioned, they probably came on cargo ships. It's just kind of crazy to think about how, there are probably already snakes on that island, but this specific snake, or I don't know if they had them specifically, but
right. But and it's crazy too, because you said, like, you used the word specifically, like this snake. This snake, let me tell you, just some of the research that I've done, like getting involved with this project, it looks like one of the most adaptive species I've ever seen. We've been trying since the 40s to get rid of
I
this
wanted
snake.
to ask you that eventually. It can't be that hard, right?
Wild.
How many
it's
are
wild.
there?
It's wild. So at this point in time, I guess I completely railroaded the discussion on the project, but this is like something that
it's important.
I'm still blown away by. So as of, I want to say, the beginning of 2022, the brown tree snake outnumbered Guam's people 10 to 1.
Wow.
They estimate today that there are about 2 million brown tree snakes on the island of Guam. The island of Guam is tiny. I can't tell you the number exactly, but it's very, very small. It's unreal. The snakes have been, like I said, so just adaptive, which is always such a cool thing to talk about where they're supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
But adaptive here kind of to the detriment of many.
Mm-hmm.
Another stat that I've seen in years past, I guess not years past, in the past year, 2023, DAR is Guam's kind of division of agriculture, wildlife resources, and along with fish and wildlife, since that is a U.S. territory, on the Air Force Base on the island alone last year, 3,200 snakes. So like you work out the math, it's like,
wow.
I don't know, like 5 to 10 snakes every day that they trap just on the Air Force Base. And they have to trap them on the Air Force Base because, like they got on the cargo ships, they will work their way into the gears and all the underworkings of these planes and then
cause issues.
And then go somewhere else, you know? So it's cause issues with the planes, or get in and just hang on until they get somewhere else to potentially do the same thing. So they're scary.
How big are they?
They can actually, so they're a fairly slender snake, which I always knew, but I never realized they can get up to like 9-10 feet long.
Wow.
Which is
huge.
terrifying. So I've also seen recently where they have issues with, because we talk about animal problems, obviously, we also talk about people problems. They'll get into like transformer boxes and electrical boxes and cause shortage like things and outages all over the island. They've also been documented catching chickens, like people's domestic chickens, and some like small pets. And they're a venomous snake, so they're a rear fanged snake. So typically with people, they're not too much of an issue as far as like being envenomated, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But they can bite smaller things and envenomate them, and it's over.
That's madness.
There's this many. So like, I'm just imagining you're walking down the sidewalk and you see them everywhere. Like we see the like European wall is over here or something. So I'm like, why can't we catch them?
They're just everywhere. They're everywhere.
Camouflage really well.
They
and,
camouflage,
and
they're an arboreal species, and they've also noted, talking about the adaptive nature, they have over the years attempted to create different opportunities for nesting for kingfishers, like trying out different styles of nest cavities and things of that nature. One video that I saw talking about the arboreal nature of the brown tree snake, it's literally a metal post, no texture to it, no fingers that they could like grab onto, no branches, with a cavity at the top. So the kingfishers theoretically would just fly in. There's no landing anywhere. They just go straight in. There are videos, night vision videos of the brown tree snake, and this is where they documented this behavior. It's called lassoing. The brown tree snake, because it's so lightweight, but it's so long, it will actually like, you can't see this in a podcast, but they will actually like wrap themselves around the other end of themselves. And
to give themselves a texture and leverage.
Yeah, work their way up and get into these nest cavities. So we're fighting an uphill battle for sure with the brown tree snake. Fish and Wildlife, like I said, and DAR have been just working tirelessly to figure this out, and it's just it's tough. It's very, very tough. It's an uphill battle, but because of what we're doing, we have hopes. We have high hopes. So back to the kingfishers. So like I said, on the island of Guam, Dunzo. They're extinct in the wild. The Guam kingfisher is extinct in the wild. It's found nowhere else but in U.S. zoos. So in the 80s, 1988 was the last wild sighting of a Guam kingfisher. In the early 80s, Fish and Wildlife decided to collect as many birds as they could find.
Like they had foresight that this was going to be an issue.
They had already seen the years. They're like, wait a minute, why is it so quiet in this forest? because kingfishers, even though they're tiny, they're noisy, along with the other species of birds that were there. All the birds were trapped and brought into U.S. zoos to hopefully start a breeding program and then eventually reintroduction after the brown tree snake's gone.
Right.
But here we are, right?
Now there's only 2 million of them.
Yeah. So they collected 40-ish birds in the 80s, and like I said, brought them into U.S. zoos. I believe the Cincinnati Zoo had kingfishers as early as 1988, I believe is the records that I've seen. I think that's when we got our first Guam kingfishers. There was discussion about let's see what we can do. Let's learn what they're up to, how they breed, what they need from us, that kind of thing. So that's been, like I said, since the late 80s, early 90s that's been happening in zoos. And a lot of us have gotten pretty good at it, to be continued, right? So it was just really a process of figuring out, because that was also a species that wasn't studied in the wild, because they are so secretive and they're so kind of protective over their territory and that kind of thing. We didn't know a lot about them. So when they came to zoos, it was kind of a crapshoot figuring out what we're doing. Zoos were already breeding other species of kingfishers, but just some kind of nuances with the species and that kind of thing. So fast forward to like current time, like that was the ancient days,
Feels like it.
So like 2000s, mid 2000s and on, mid 2000s anyway. 2012, so I was here, so we got our first pair of kingfishers since I was employed in the bird department. So we had them set up and they were breeding and it was awesome. It was great, don't get me wrong, but with no real kind of clear goal to reintroduction or what that kind of looked like. So, again, U.S. zoos had these kingfishers just trying to get numbers up for potential release or what have you, whatever that looked like. Again, fast forward 2022, Fish and Wildlife finally got some clearance for a project, which is what we're working on now. So the project itself that we're working with is a translocation project, which is different from reintroduction because this is where things get scatterbrained here. They're being introduced to a space that was never their native range.
I had questions about this.
I have questions about it too. Don't get me wrong. So being introduced, Palmyra Atoll is the kind of atoll. It's not an island. It's a tiny little spit of land, less than 6 square acres. 6 acres.
Oh, wow.
Like it's big enough for like there's a building. There is a short runway for planes to get there, and that's the end of it. So it's a tiny little place. No one lives there permanently. There are no permanent residents of Palmyra. There's a lot of research that atoll is the property of the Nature Conservancy. So Fish and Wildlife and AZA working with the Nature Conservancy to kind of move forward in that space. But I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Can I ask my question though?
Yes.
Now
that we're at a natural stopping point,
yes.
because I can't remember what I said.
I have 2 questions. If it's the correct habitat for them, why do you think they were never there to begin with?
It is actually really far away.
Oh, okay.
So it's a similar habitat with potentially similar prey species and things of that nature. It is just, Palmyra Atoll is like south of Hawaii.
Okay.
So if you're like, the podcast can't see me, but you're looking at Hawaii, Palmyra is here, Guam is way over here, closer to Australia.
Halfway across the Pacific,
yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely. So similar habitat, it's uninhabited by people permanently, I guess I should say. And it's owned by the Nature Conservancy, so like we've got kind of a leg up, I guess. I don't know if that's the word to use, but we've got an in, basically. Okay. Also, Guam, infested with brown tree snakes. Northern Marianas Islands are kind of north of Guam. That's where a lot of tropical bird conservation, because they're endemic species. Like there's always a problem there. Always a conservation initiative getting going. The brown tree snakes have made their way that direction as well. So there have been some other projects that have been semi-successful, I believe, with some of the other species of birds on Guam. But the kingfishers, I think the prey is probably not there. And the brown tree snake is just getting worse. So unfortunately, we had to look elsewhere. So Palmyra Atoll is the answer for the time being. And basically, the idea is we move captive hatched kingfishers to Palmyra to see how it works, frankly. So they're young birds. Basically, we want to see these birds that were hatched in zoos. Can they figure out how to eat? Can they figure out what their prey species should be? Can they figure out how to survive? So they'll be in an aviary once they get there, kind of as a soft release kind of situation. And like I said, Nature Conservancy, Fish and Wildlife, boatloads of research from AZA and that kind of thing. People from AZA will be there to monitor everything. So observations are
ongoing
through the entirety. So potentially, I believe they'll be in the release aviary for a month, maybe a little bit more. Just like I said, to see what everybody's up to and that kind of thing, and then we'll open the door. I don't know all the ins and outs of what exactly what the steps are, or what their kind of like precursors are for making that decision. But then we let them out and see what happens.
So do you know if this is considered like a kind of like a permanent solution is the hope for the Guam kingfisher, or is this the hope that like we can see what works here and maybe we can learn some lessons from this?
Yes.
And then carry those forth.
Yes. So permanent solution, who knows what that is? We don't actually know. So yes, this is a kind of a trial, just to see what happens, how things work out, how the birds adapt. Like I mentioned earlier with BB, it's very rare for a kingfisher to be imprinted or overly interested in people. So we think that it's going to go great, right? We hope that it's going to go great. But
like it's a good species to trial
yes,
for.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and there have been, I wish I could now, I don't know, have my notes in front of me. There have been other instances of translocations with a little bit kind of tweaked kind of things. Typically, it's a species. I believe the gray wolf was one back into Yellowstone. Because they were gone from Yellowstone, so it's still reintroduction because they were there at one point in time. So it's kind of all the definitions. I'm not 100% sold on. Yes, who really knows actually is the answer. But this is kind of just an experimental population to see how it goes, see what happens, see natural behaviors that we don't know about. You know, like I mentioned earlier, the Guam kingfisher is a species we don't know anything about them in the wild. Like we don't know what they're up to. We don't know a lot of their habits other than stuff that we've seen here in zoos in the U.S. So it's basically a let's see what the heck they do, you know, kind of thing in a safe, moderately controlled situation.
Sure.
I'm just like, so, I mean, not to put you on the spot, this isn't your decision. But how, okay, do we need to be worried about, though, we're just talking about invasive or introduced species, and
that
we're
literally
introducing,
so,
are we worried about all the animals they're going to eat and that, like...
So there have been lots of
we're
studies.
solving the same issue with the same thing.
Yes, that has crossed my mind a million times, like it keeps me up at night. What are we going to do? Oh my gosh, what are we doing? What are we getting into? So I would love to say that I feel like Fish and Wildlife really did the research sometimes, you know, here we are. But there has been a lot of research about like the beetles that they would be interested in and the lizards and like that kind of thing and what other kind of predators or whatever carnivores would be eating those kinds of things. So where does that, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of been discussed. Like there's a big like 40-page paper that I haven't read that talks about a lot of that stuff. Now, to your point, did they figure everything out? who actually knows? We'll never know. It's just kind of the whole invasive species and introduced species thing has absolutely, like I said, it keeps me up at night because theoretically speaking, a predator like a kingfisher, that's all they do. Mm-hmm. That's how they eat. This is how they survive. They kill things. I will say the kind of quote unquote carrying capacity of Palmyra Atoll is small. So I can't, just from my completely uneducated thought process, I would venture to guess that the impact will not be near what we imagine negatively, we imagine that it could be.
And it'll be more managed and like controlled if necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't know all the ins and outs of like the soft release aviary. Like if they see that something that they found a prey species that we didn't expect, is that a pullback? Is that a wait? Is that what does that look like? And I wish I had the answer to that.
Yeah.
And it could be a calculated risk, right? No move is risk free, but
absolutely.
You can say with reasonable hope that it's not going to become a situation like the brown tree snakes. And I guess, like you said, it is a bit of a more controlled environment. It's only 6 acres. This whole island.
It's pretty small, yes. So.
Yeah.
Here's hoping, right? You know.
Sorry, not to be the bummer, but
no,
I
absolutely.
Get out of my head, like...
These are absolutely
valid
things that we that have been discussed, and and Kim, my coworker, we sit around and talk about dreamy questions all the time. Dream, night. That's what we say. Nightmares are also dreams. Like that's one of those. So it's always kind of in the back of your mind when this, like you mentioned earlier, this is such a passion project. Like we have just the highest hopes and the dreamiest dreams about it and that kind of thing. It's hard to then pull back and be like, wait,
what could go wrong?
What are we doing? I'm not sure. The thoughts are always there, and I would never say, don't have those thoughts, just feel good about it, because that's unreasonable. Mm-hmm. That's not what we're wanting to do. We want to make sure that we're doing right by the birds and Palmyra and any prey species that might be there in the ecosystem and that kind of thing. So,
so the goal is ultimately to get a population of birds over to Palmyra, mm-hmm. which is where our zoo and your work comes in, right?
Yes.
How did we get involved in this?
We got involved because we're pretty great. So this project actually started last summer, and that was the first time we'd done it. So it was kind of like, we'll see what the heck happens. So I believe last summer there were 12 zoos that were involved. So 12 zoos that have the sihek, the Guam Kingfisher, already a genetically valuable pair kind of situation, and we were asked to set them up in a breeding scenario, just as we normally would. Just let them do their thing, that kind of thing. And I believe the goal last year was 10 birds to send to Guam. Unfortunately, last year it was unsuccessful. We hatched two. Now I can't remember. There's so many numbers floating in my head. I believe we hatched. So let me backtrack. Within those zoos in the States, Sedgwick County Zoo, which has been a huge player in this. Also the Guam Kingfisher SSP is the director there. We love him. He's wonderful. So basically they set up a biosecurity unit. A really glorified shipping container turned into a bird nursery and rearing center. So last summer, any eggs that were produced at these zoos were shipped or driven to Sedgwick County Zoo, and then Sedgwick County would be the kind of jumping off point to Palmyra. So I believe that we potentially had, there's no data to show this is exactly what happened. We believe that potentially there were some issues with incubation in transit.
Okay.
So changes in humidity, changes in temperature. You're in a car, things bounce and that kind of thing. Is that what happened? We're not entirely sure, but we had not quite the greatest kind of hatchability with the eggs at the biosecurity unit in Sedgwick. So fast forward to this year, the same game plan was to send eggs, but with very specific incubation parameters, like how you pack the eggs in your brooders to send them, and all that kind of stuff, like very specific math. There's a lot of math involved through the incubation process, figuring out. So ideally for Guam Kingfisher, throughout incubation, the egg would lose about 13 to 17% of its weight. And that weight loss is in evaporation. So the baby, the embryo is taking up more space. The fluid is evaporating so that the baby has kind of room to grow. But there is the kind of a sweet spot for all bird species of that kind of weight loss throughout incubation. So we had very specific parameters this season of, so we had several incubators set up just for Guam Kingfishers. Got really crazy, but we did it. It worked. We made it work. So we had an incubator set at kind of our typical parameters. We had an incubator set significantly lower humidity, so that if the egg was not losing enough weight, we could move it into this other incubator, so it would actually potentially lose more weight because it's at a lower humidity. It's drawing out more fluid from the egg, if that makes sense. So those parameters were set for kind of every zoo. This summer there were nine zoos involved. So those parameters were kind of set across the board just to kind of remove that variable. And then, like I said, all the transit kind of parameters and that kind of thing was all across the board. Every zoo do the exact same thing. So about 3 weeks in, we opened the Kingfisher nest cavities on March the 15th. About 3 weeks in, still nobody had any eggs. I believe nobody had any.
Like no
eggs.
other zoos.
No,
not just
we
here.
didn't. Our other
We have
other
two
zoos.
breeding pairs?
We have 2 breeding pairs.
Okay.
Yes. So at about, I believe it was about 3 weeks, they changed the protocol. Okay, can we leave the eggs, because we were kind of pulling the eggs as soon as they were laid.
Okay.
To our incubation room. So can we, if you have proven incubating birds, if they're good at it, can we leave the eggs for a week and see what happens? Historically speaking, in aviculture, parents always do it better. So we did that with with 2 eggs. Actually, take that back. Timeline wise, sorry. We had 2 eggs in that first, like in week 3. We had 2 eggs.
Okay.
We pulled to our incubators. I'm sorry, I'm losing track of my mind, actually.
It's been a busy couple months.
Yes, oh my gosh, it's crazy. So our first 2 eggs in our incubators, and we were absolutely having to modify humidity and all this kind of stuff. And that's something that we've not done a lot of in the past. So it was absolutely a learning experience, like trying to figure out what exactly, like we knew how, but what are the outcomes and what do we, all these different things. So then, then we got to, let's leave the eggs with the parents for a week and see what happens. So our next 2 eggs, we left with parents, proven breeders, proven incubators. They've raised chicks before on their own. So the 2 eggs that were left with the parents for a week of a 21-day incubation, their weight loss was perfect for the entire rest of the incubation. Oh, wow. The parents set, however they do it, they set it up for success already. So they lost exactly the weight they were supposed to, and everything went wonderfully. They were perfect. It was wild. It's still weird. I don't understand it, but that's okay. It worked. And then still other zoos were having issues. Of course we weren't. I'm just kidding. Being facetious a little bit. But so then a different protocol was set in place because other places were still having issues with the weight loss and that kind of thing. Okay. Or they potentially didn't have birds that had bred before, so they were not great at incubation.
So they couldn't leave they
couldn't leave the eggs. Yeah.
Okay.
So either scenario, I can't speak on that. I don't know what the scenarios were at other institutions, obviously. But so then next protocol put in place was hatch and raise your chicks until you can take the chicks to Sedgwick County Zoo.
I was
So-
wondering about that. What
Yes.
is there a reason that wasn't the original protocol, or that the parents can't hatch the chicks and then?
So, as far as the parents hatching the chicks, so Guam Kingfishers historically only raise one chick.
Oh.
They'll lay 2 eggs, but they'll only raise 1 chick. Now, is that a resource thing? Is it what exactly is that? I can't really speak on that. But that's what we've seen in the past. The year of COVID, 2020, we had the older breeding pair that we have that's very successful. They laid 2 eggs. But because of staffing changes and all this other stuff, you guys know the COVID drill, we left the eggs to see what they would do. They did great with 1 chick.
Okay.
The second egg, whether it did, I mean, obviously they had to incubate it appropriately, so honestly we can't say if did it just pass, did it not hatch, we don't actually know. But they have successfully raised a chick at a time.
Okay.
Obviously with this project we want numbers of birds to get the project going, so the artificial incubation and hatching was ideal because we could do both. We could do 2. That's what we did.
You should leave one with the parents and one.
We have had, again, Kim and I's dreamy dreams, we've had some harebrained ideas. That's what Kim and I have, harebrained hour first thing in the morning every day, where we're like, what if we do this? It's happened with Kingfishers, absolutely. So, and that is a method that we've done in the past, even like 2012, 2013, when we had Kingfishers before. We would leave one and just check on it from day to day, and the parents did everything they were supposed to, and then a second one in our bird nursery.
Interesting. Okay.
So we could still have all the genetics
Yeah.
and still 2 chicks and kind of move forward that way. That is absolutely a method for sure. We need all the babies that we can get, and with especially this season, with all the parameters that we had to kind of manage, we can't do anything in a nest. They just do whatever you want, live it up, right? And they usually do, though. They're pretty good at it, oddly enough. But at any rate, so we have now in total, I just checked my text messages from a good friend of mine who she ran the biosecurity unit last summer, Erica Royer at Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute.
Awesome.
She ran this biosecurity unit last summer and has nothing to do with the biosecurity unit this year because she's going to Palmyra with the birds. So I'm super excited for her, and she's a great resource for just boatloads of things. But I was just checking a text message on the way over here. So currently the project has 8 chicks, as of Sunday, 8 chicks at the biosecurity unit, 3 chicks that are still at their institutions on the way to the biosecurity unit, and 2 eggs.
Wow.
So fingers absolutely crossed, toes, all of the things, cross everything, because that number is...
You needed 10 right before you were going to do it?
We set it for 9 this season.
Oh, okay.
So golden. That is, if those chicks all continue to do what they're doing and make it there safely, and the eggs hatch and all that good stuff, here we are. We're looking at potentially, 13 birds, to be released onto Palmyra Atoll, and hopefully tell us what we need to know, right?
Yeah.
So we can continue this project and into the future. Obviously, if we're successful, hopefully not too far into the future because of carrying capacities of the island, of the atoll. All the while working on the brown tree snake. What the heck do we still do with the brown tree snake? And that is a total kind of up in the air crapshoot kind of thing. I think it is I don't want to say it's a long shot, but it's an uphill battle for certain, without question. So, like I said, cross your fingers, cross your toes that all those babies do well, and
so all the babies, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misunderstanding this.
No, you're good.
All the babies from the institutions around, they converge on Sedgwick County at this biosecure cargo.
It's a shipping
container.
Yes, it's a
basically.
shipping container. So
and then they're going together from
and they
there.
will all leave
Okay.
together to go to Palmyra. So also in with that, to staff this biosecurity unit, so the people working the biosecurity unit are not supposed to do anything else.
Oh, yeah.
So
That makes
Sedgwick
sense.
County bird staff, they're taking care of their kingfishers. Somebody else has to take care of the chicks and the eggs and all that good stuff. So awesome opportunity for keepers from the zoos that are providing these kids to go and work for a 1 or a 2 week period.
Awesome.
So our bird curator, Jenny Gaynor, went for a week, and then Kim Klosterman, who's a coworker of mine, went for a week, and both kind of staffed the biosecurity unit while I was here
Helping out.
doing math
everything.
and losing my mind, with the eggs and our raising our chicks here. So it's a really cool, on top of that, in last year and this year, Cody Sowers, our head keeper, Matt Miller, Dan Camfield, who are also bird staff, have played a role in transit situations too. So we, at one point in time, our first egg, I believe, went to National Aviary in Pittsburgh. And then one of their keepers was going out to work the biosecurity unit. So she took our egg and their egg kind of thing. And then we had another egg that went, it's madness. So madness. There's like eggs like flying all over the place. So we had another egg that went to National Aviary, and then that was after the raise your own chicks kind of thing. So they hatched and raised that chick for 5 or 6 days, and then it also went to Sedgwick. And then just last week, Kim and I drove to Kansas, Sedgwick County Zoo, Wichita, Kansas, which is about a 12-hour drive, stopping every 3 hours to feed the babies that we're taking.
Wow.
It was a riot. It was a real riot.
Did you say this and I missed it somehow in all this?
I could have not. I could have missed
How
it.
many eggs did we have this year? How many hatched? How many, like...
That was my next point.
Oh, I'm sorry, because I'm like,
No,
wait,
it's
did I
okay.
miss
No, it's
this
okay. I'm
somehow?
glad that you
Okay.
asked. Perfect segue. So we are very proud of our bird department in general. You guys know this.
Yeah,
You've
absolutely.
seen us around the zoo. We're not
Absolutely.
cocky at all.
They're
very,
not.
very confident, and really happy about it. So 5 of the 8 chicks at the biosecurity unit currently came from Cincinnati Zoo birds.
Incredible.
So
I have so many. Sorry, I try not to interrupt people, but we have 2 breeding pairs. They normally
Yes.
lay 2 eggs.
they laid 2 eggs.
How
Both
did
of
we end
those
up with
pairs
5?
laid. So we had in total throughout the whole season 12 eggs.
What's the season?
So it opened, we opened their nest cavities, their nest, the nest in palm logs. It's so cute. We opened their nest cavities on March the 15th. So the kind of, I don't want to say hindrance, because that's not the word, but we do have a time period where we have to get them out there.
Yeah.
So they have to be at least around about a month old. So the chicks have to be about a month old before they can even go. So we are now at the stage of our pairs no longer have access to their nest cavities because they've done their deed. They did the work.
Because
Both of
if
them.
you take the eggs, then they will breed again.
Correct.
So
Yes.
now you're,
yes.
like,
So
taking-
they're finished. They've done their U.S. duty. They did it.
They
kind
helped
of
out
thing.
the
So
species,
They
yeah.
did it. They
Yeah.
so did it. So so they both had 4 clutches of eggs, which means they four sets of 2 eggs each pair. So we had in total. Generally speaking, 4 sets of 2 eggs. We had 12 eggs total.
Okay.
So there were a couple clutches in there that were just 1, or they potentially broke 1, or what
Okay.
have you.
Yeah.
That only happened one time this season, which was kind of weird anyway that they did it, but also pretty stinking good. We'll take that. Kingfishers are not known for their intelligence. We'll put it that way. So they're so endearing, but that's not their shtick. So we had 12 eggs total, 5 chicks doing wonderfully. We had 1 chick that didn't hatch or 1 egg that did not hatch at Sedgwick, but everybody else did their thing.
That's
So
amazing.
so we had, like I said, early on we had. At one point in time, there were 5 chicks in the country. 4 of them came from the Cincinnati Zoo. And that's
That's incredible.
I'll talk about that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's
It's
amazing.
like I've peaked this year.
That's
2024 was
amazing.
my year, you know. So it's been pretty exciting, and you know, like I said, my friend Erica, who's been such an influential part of all of this, she texts me every once in a while. She's like, "You guys did awesome," and I'm like, "Thanks, I know, right?" So, it's been busy. It's been a ride
So
for
just
sure.
last
So
week, you guys delivered
just last
5
week,
chicks.
yeah, Kim and I delivered 2 chicks.
2 chicks.
We had. How did that fit together? We delivered 2 chicks and an egg.
Okay.
Since then, that egg is hatched and is beautiful and healthy, and feisty. That's our favorite thing about them. The first chick that hatched for the project came from here, and I feel awful because I can't remember her real name, but colloquially they call her Monster.
Monster.
She is feisty and she is like, give me this. I'm eating on my own. Leave me alone, kind of thing. So we're proud of that too.
Yeah.
We do it right, you know.
So you wanted a certain number, which was 9 this year, just for like population's sake. Did the sex ratio matter for that, or do you even know?
It did. Yes, we do.
Okay.
So
Since birds are hard to tell.
yes, we have to send out eggs. So there's a little tiny bit of genetic material left in the egg after a hatch, so we can actually send out the eggshells,
Okay.
and they send us back
Oh, that's
results.
awesome. Yeah.
So typically within, I want to say at least 6 months, maybe even a year. I could have my numbers right. I could have my numbers wrong, but can take up to a year. I think that's right. I'm sorry. To for the sex of the bird to be visible.
Okay.
Because the males and females are dimorphic for sure, but it takes a while for those birds to get their adult plumage. So you have to do it as a youngster, and because they're so tiny, I think our first one came out at 6 grams. Wow.
6 grams. Oh my goodness.
So because they're so tiny, taking blood is not really
Yeah.
a good option because they don't have that much,
Yeah.
you know. So that's one of the coolest things I think is we can just send out this egg that would otherwise just be like, well, sent to the hospital, you know, like get rid of it kind of thing. It holds huge answers, you know. So I believe three of our chicks we've gotten the sex results, so we have 2 females and a male. The females were the ones we were lacking. So we were stoked that
That's great. Yeah.
that we had at least 2 of our 3. Like I said, I don't think I have not seen the results of the last 2, but yes, so we're excited about that too.
That's awesome.
Yes.
How was the trip for you guys out to Kansas?
It was a lot.
What was that drive like, feeding these birds the whole time?
So initially, because I will just put it this way, again, you guys know me, I had a big head about it, and I'm like, yeah, I could just feed them when we're in the car. It's like, that's ridiculous. But what we did do was pull over at a gas station and feed these, you know, extinct in the wild, critically endangered
No big
species.
deal.
It's fine. I have a
Gas
picture on my
station.
phone of the one sitting on the scale, like completely naked. His eyes are barely open, and like you can see the gas pumps in the background and stuff. It's adorable. It's perfect. It was a ride.
How long is that drive?
So estimates before we left
Stops.
were 11.5 to 12 hours.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you the amount of time it took us. It was way shorter than I expected. So, because our baby feeds, like I said, every 3 hours. And then I'm just going to put Kim on the spot here. We had to stop at Burger King a couple times.
Hey, you got to get your fuel for the drive.
You know. So every 3 hours, stop for a feeding, which took.
For Kim.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was a different stop. No, I'm just kidding. She's going to kill me. And then those baby feedings, because there was like, I had to go fill up a thermos in a gas station bathroom. Don't tell anybody I said that, but that's, you know, that's where else, you know? So it was kind of a variety of different things that had to get done, like, at each stop, but each stop was at least 30 minutes to feed the babies. Because you're like tweezer feeding them, like little pieces of pinkies and lizards and cricket butts and all kinds of stuff. So it was a time. It was a time. We'll put it that way.
Not important at all.
No. It was fun. Kim and I have worked together a whole lot on the Kingfisher project. Obviously with help from everyone in our department, but Kim and I kind of took the reins on that, on our end of it. So it was good to that was the finale of the project, was Kim and I getting to hang so much. But we definitely flew home. So
nice.
That's awesome.
That was also a really nice highlight.
A good
we
reward.
didn't have to, we could just sleep,
Yes. Yeah.
So now there's currently 13 birds or eggs at Sedgwick.
Yep.
We're responsible for 5 of those.
5, yes.
Which is incredible.
Yes.
That's amazing work. This is one of my favorite stories because, I think guests and visitors hear a lot about, what we do with lions or giant pandas or, the routes that zoos take to take care of those animals. But, just hearing about some of these logistics and eggs going here and chicks going here and
madness.
This is
Absolute
all for
madness.
a bird species that I don't think many guests would have ever even heard of.
And they're literally extinct in the wild.
Extinct in the
Extinct in the wild is a
Yeah.
scary thing to say.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And no one knows about them. It's everybody has to know about them,
Yeah.
Like I said, I mentioned earlier, I stopped and talked to somebody at Kroger the other day about kingfishers. I was doing, a couple weeks ago, I was doing a penguin VIP tour, and they asked about reintroductions. I was like, well, let me tell you. But they were super stoked about it, They were sitting there with a penguin learning about these extinct in the wild kingfishers that we're playing such a huge role in the conservation of. So, we're trying. We're getting it out there,
I mean, it's such a huge career goal or highlight, I think, for most of us to be able to actually help. We feel like we're helping and we're doing things by educating and taking good care of the animals here, but helping animals in the wild is my
Directly.
dream.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's like a lot of our help is indirect.
Yes.
But yeah.
I've mentioned that before to a couple people. It's we all have our days. You come in and you feed the lions, you feed the penguins. You live your life, and it's your kind of routine. This will get you out of bed in the morning.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's I'm not a morning person by any means, but my alarm goes off and I'm like, I wonder what the babies are doing. I wonder what they're doing.
Yeah.
Did they hatch? Did they do this? Did they do that kind of thing? So, that's been it's been a nice. I don't want to call it a refresher because, like we talked about earlier, I love my job. I love everything about my job. But it's
reinvigorates you a little bit.
It's like a kick in the pants, it's yes, this is great kind of thing. So, that was another cool thing that we did. So, Pat Story has come over a few times to get photos, and he actually got one of the hatches. He set up his camera inside the incubator.
Oh, awesome.
So he got one of the hatches, start to finish, baby hatched.
That's amazing.
And now that baby, by the end of the summer, is going to be in Palmyra.
That's awesome.
Eating some whatever native Palmyran beetles, or whatever it's going to eat. I don't know, but it's just like you said, it's just oh my gosh, this is real.
Yeah.
We do so much here, just with our guests and, with our populations and human care. But it's just, this hits different.
Yeah.
It's just so cool. It's been an amazing thing to be a part of. Just having Guam Kingfishers for me is already oh my gosh, what? These are so cool. But being a part of this project has just really just knocked it out of the park.
And hopefully it goes on for however long it needs to until we get rid of those. I mean, round tree snakes or
gosh.
whatever.
If anybody has any ideas, please throw them out.
I'm about to start throwing. I'm just gonna be proposing one day. I have an idea.
I gotta call Fish and
I want to
Wildlife.
fix this. And you'll hopefully get to be a part of it and more and more. And maybe one day be on the island of Guam and see one in the wild.
Oh gosh. At Dreams, right? That is. It's huge. It's huge to even think about. I can't even fathom what that means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did talk about. I don't want to say his name because he told me not to. But a person who kind of was part of the early onset of this project and was part of the let's check out Palmyra. Let's see what's here. What could we figure out as a carrying capacity, as potential problems, as prey species, like the initial kind of trip. And he's like, I'll never go back.
On the
Why?
And I laughed so hard, and I'm like, why? He's like, there's these blood parasites, and there are these arboreal leeches
Oh,
on
wow.
Palmyra. So they hang out in trees, I guess, but then they just drop onto things and make their way, this is disgusting, towards your mucous membranes, which usually ends up being your eyes.
Yikes.
So that's what's there in Palmyra.
No wonder no one lives there.
No one.
Absolutely, right?
Indonesia has
So-
like the terrestrial leeches,
Yeah,
and they'll just
yeah.
like crawl up you. But that's way worse.
No,
that they're
these guys,
falling and they go
they-
for your mucus membranes.
Yeah. So your eyes mostly, I think. Is
That sounds like
typically-
they'd be good prey for the
Heck
the
yeah,
Seahawks,
right?
honestly.
It sounds so good for them, easy, slow, And then the blood parasite is in the soil, it's in the sand, so you can't go anywhere with no shoes on because they burrow through the bottom of your feet.
Okay,
Yikes.
I just got
So
to
he
be
tells
worried
me-
for the birds though.
So, well, tree kingfishers, live it up.
Leeches don't find their eyes.
I do too, absolutely. But so he's telling me this story. He's like, this project is so important. There are loads of other people that can go, and I love that. I'm so happy. So he relays the leeches and the blood parasites and that kind of thing, and I'm like, I'm going.
Sign me up.
I'm going. Give me some boots. I'll be there. Maybe a hat. I don't know. So,
Goggles.
yes, exactly. So I can't imagine not being a part of this as long as it continues, in whatever capacity that looks like. I love the baby part. I love the eggs part. But I also love, a good tropical island in the middle of an ocean.
Right.
So, just if anybody's listening, but yeah, so it's been awesome. And I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, I can't wait. We'll have to do a follow-up next
Yes,
year.
absolutely.
Yes.
And you and your team should be so proud of the work
Yes,
you've done.
amazing.
Like, not just our birdhouse team here at Cincinnati. Obviously, you're covering for each other. You're going on these trips, but just the program as a whole. Like, it's something awesome to be a part of. I'm happy for you all.
It's
Love
really,
to see the success.
Yeah, it's really been exciting, and it's really been a time like Team Bird. We're a tight knit group, but aspects of things like this, it's like, man, this is awesome. Like we're doing this, So, and also like shout out to our 4 Kingfishers. They're just doing
really the real
they're
stars.
doing the
real
real
stars.
MVPs. They're doing the good work. So.
Oh, God, we didn't forget them.
Love to see it.
Do you have trivia
Well,
today?
I would say, Aimee, if you're up for it, I do have some Kingfisher trivia
Ooh.
for the two of
Kingfisher.
you.
I don't even have a chance.
We could do it as a team, maybe?
Yeah.
The two of you
No,
can
I'm
put
too
your-
competitive
Put
for
your
that.
concepts together. See what we can come up with here. Question number 1. Jenna, you had to have known this one was coming. This is a common question whenever we get a new species that we're covering here. How many different species are in the Kingfisher
I knew
family?
you were going to say that.
How
I
many?
knew it. I knew it was coming.
I'm always so far off. Do you know that?
Every time I read these, what I learn is there's always more species
More.
out
There's
there.
way.
than
I know
realize.
there are a lot. So, because I can tell you hornbills, they're like 54-ish, 54, I think 54 species of hornbills. And I know there are way more than that of species of kingfishers.
Oh, that's a good hint.
There you go, Jenny. You got a starting place at least.
My guess is 77.
77? Okay. Aimee, you have a guess?
They're going to fire me.
I should have told you before you signed up for this.
Oh, man,
if you get
study
this
up.
wrong.
You need to know everything about
Study
every
up,
species in the
right?
world. No, there's no way.
I think 112.
Wow.
You're really close. There's a little bit of debate around a couple of the species,
Yep.
whether they're subspecies, species. So it's right around 120. 120.
Wow.
That's spot on.
Eat that, Jenna.
I'm actually kind of happy with my guess. Usually it's so
That was
wrong.
pretty good. I mean,
That's incredible. Love to see
It
it.
wasn't embarrassing as it is sometimes.
All right, next question I have for you all. I'm going to let Jenna answer this one first because Aimee actually mentioned this species
hate when this
already
happens.
in the podcast. What is the largest species of kingfisher in the world?
She mentioned this.
She did mention it.
Did she say it like
Hint.
this is the largest?
Hint, it's not a rhinoceros hornbill.
It's not a rhinoceros hornbill.
Wait, you said kingfisher, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's your hint.
Largest species
I
of
didn't say it was
kingfisher.
helpful.
Oh my gosh.
I will give you a hint. The species doesn't have the term kingfisher in it.
Oh, kookaburra.
Kookaburra. There you go. Yeah.
But no,
Nice.
I thought that was her. I didn't realize they were actually.
They're in the family.
They
Yeah.
are a
Yeah.
kingfisher
Okay.
species.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think you
laughing
did say that,
kookaburra.
but yeah, good example of what they look like, or like the type of predator they are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure our guests have seen kookaburras when they've come to our zoo.
Oh,
We've
for
got-
sure. Yeah.
They're very noisy. You're going to
Yes.
hear them if you don't see them. So they're really cool birds. But all right, 2 for 2 so far. I'm loving this. All right, when was the Guam kingfisher declared extinct in the wild?
You know it, right? So do you want me to say
I'm
it
pretty
first?
sure she mentioned this in the podcast.
I think
but
I know it, but I didn't know. I was going to say it first if she knows.
I don't know.
You go first, Jenna. You go first.
It's 1988, right?
1988.
88 was
That's spot on.
the last sighting of a wild.
Well,
wild
sad.
kingfisher.
Spot on.
Yes.
Yeah,
I know.
listen.
So,
Yeah, we're like, yes!
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, I got it right.
No.
But just highlights the
You were
importance
right.
of the
We'll put
work
it
that
that
you guys
way.
are doing, knowing the species is extinct in the wild, and like the fact that it could be seen in native habitat, potentially coming up on Palmyra for the first time in my lifetime. What is that? 34
You're so
years,
young.
35
Oh my
years.
gosh.
Like that's
Yeah.
insane. Fingers crossed everything works out. All right, this one I may need to update my numbers on, depending on if Aimee's got the latest numbers. How many sihek chicks have been hatched at the Cincinnati Zoo?
Ooh,
An all time.
All time.
I don't think I know that.
Oh.
I know the ones that I've hatched.
Did you get on Zims for this?
That counts for something.
How do you know this?
Any guesses?
Oh, there were 5 this year.
Yep. You got that part.
She's got the 5 this year.
21.
21, okay. Aimee?
Where'd you get this answer?
It was in the publication.
Oh.
It was in the publication.
47.
47. It's right in the middle of both of you guys. Counting the 5 this year, we're at 33.
Okay.
33, right in between, yeah. But
So,
that's a bunch of birds
Yeah,
over the
it
years.
is,
I know,
it
that's
is.
incredible.
and all of those birds went on to, so they could potentially, I don't know this for a fact, but they could theoretically be parents of some of these chicks that
Yeah.
are going to Palmyra.
Within their lineage, yeah,
Yeah.
some ancestors. Exactly, yeah.
I just love this. I just love it.
Love it. Last question I have for you guys. Jenna, you know I usually like to ask a random weird question about, Big Bird or something like that, but I don't have anything quite that weird today.
Oh, darn.
But just to kind of symbolize what the kingfisher means to some people, in Southeast Asia, the kingfisher is known as a symbol of what? These are like kind of traits of humans, like it's a little
She's
bit of an
brought up
abstract
like
question.
murder and monsters.
It is not murder or monsters.
Death.
It's actually quite the opposite.
Yes!
So it's in a lot of Southeastern Asian cultures, the kingfisher is known as a symbol of what? There's a couple terms here that I would accept a bunch.
Do
But
you want to guess first, or do you know?
No, you've been to Southeast
you
Asia.
got any guesses? You got any?
I obviously know the answer.
Obviously.
Rebirth.
Rebirth. You're on the right track. You're a little bit off, but on the right track. Any guesses, Aimee?
No,
Nothing.
I don't know.
So that they're tranquility. Of tranquility,
Tranquility.
of patience,
That is not how
and
Aimee
of prosperity.
describes them.
But if you watch a kingfisher, you don't see any murder, like you just see them. That's one of my favorite things about kingfisher. So BB kingfisher that I mentioned earlier, the blue-breasted kingfisher that I helped raise as an intern, she would go out because she was interested in people, would go out and do programs. And it was always funny because I'd take her outside and literally on the tip of my finger. And I would show people the way that they hunt, and a lot of the same way that like our native raptors would do. They kind of zone in on something. So I would take her and I would go like this, and her eyes never moved. So
Like
she's
as she moves around, her
she's
head
like
stays
doing
still.
this number and all this stuff, and it was always just so funny. And kids absolutely loved it. Like, there's always something you can connect or like get a laugh out of, or just a memory, really.
Yeah.
So That's one of my favorite things.
Absolutely.
They're tranquil. They just sit there.
Definitely tranquil. I think a lot of it is like their coloration too. It's so bright and vivid
Yeah.
and beautiful. Like a lot of people kind of put it with prosperity or success.
Okay.
But yeah, and they say in Polynesian cultures in particular, kingfishers are known as the god of the sea and the waves.
Heck yeah.
They control the waves. So they're really important culturally in this area of the world. So fingers crossed we can get them back there in their native lands.
You're not kidding.
Be awesome to see. But thanks for being a good sport.
Yeah.
Dealing along with trivia.
No, I actually love trivia. I'm good with it. I usually am not good at trivia, so at least take these, you know?
Jenna, do we have anything else while we have Aimee?
We have our final question. What can I do?
Oh, gosh.
How can I be a better steward of the earth?
Well, if you feel like going to Guam and taking out some brown tree snakes, that's cool, but, I mean, that's not exactly
expensive
valid.
Journey.
That's quite a ride. So I think not necessarily Guam Kingfisher specifically, but here we can really focus on like invasive species. Like invasive species everywhere. There's a problem. Invasive species literally everywhere. You can find something. One of the big ones here in Ohio is invasive insects. So like the emerald ash borer. The Asian longhorn beetle. Right now we're dealing with the spotted lanternfly. Like what? I guess the biggest thing with that is you're
trying to like stop the spread.
Driftwood.
Right?
I keep saying driftwood. I'm like, that's not the word. Firewood. If you have a campfire, or if you have a fire in your backyard, or you decide to do some grilling, making s'mores. I don't know. Really focusing on like local firewood. That sounds so silly to say, but one of the biggest kind of movements from like Fish and Wildlife and the Forestry Service is making sure we're not moving firewood because that transfer of those insects really kind of takes a number on our native forests. And even if the tree is cut, even if the tree is dead, so like I said, literally firewood, they can still transfer. The insects are still alive. They could get into living forests and living habitats and things of that nature. So I guess that would be my biggest thing is just invasive species in general. Like what does that look like as a whole? It's a whole thing. But kind of directly right here, Hamilton County kind of stuff. Firewood. That sounds so silly, but it's such a huge thing. Like we were talking earlier about the emerald ash borer and the white ash trees are the ones, obviously, with the name, kind of took the hit. And one of the big preventative measures for not moving those around is getting rid of trees. So it's already a detrimental, just in that regard, trying to be preventative, getting rid of our ash trees so that those insects can't kind of take up space in more places.
That's definitely something I've never thought of before. I definitely didn't know the firewood thing. So essentially, if you're going to have a bonfire, burning firewood, you should have it from a local spot. You should buy it locally, rather than I don't know how it works, or like it is an issue because they're recommending that we don't move it, but I don't know how often people are going from like California and bringing their wood somewhere else. Right. But like definitely don't do that. And that's
even just county to county though, on a bit of a smaller scale. Like even moving bugs from county to county has a huge difference. Yeah,
for sure.
So take the time to look into where your firewood's coming from.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that one. Like you said, invasive species, not only in Guam, over here, they're an issue every part of the world you're in. So trying to address that as best as we can it's on all of us now. We all created these problems.
That is for sure. That is for sure.
Yeah. Well, Aimee, thanks so much for educating us,
Awesome.
talking about siheks, talking about kingfishers. We love hearing all about it. Your work you guys are doing is pretty inspirational.
Yes.
Good.
I'm super
Your
excited.
passion is very apparent, and it should be there. I mean, it's an amazing thing that you guys are a part of. So
yeah, our team is very, very proud of it, and thanks for listening. Thanks for helping us to kind of share this. The just excitement that we have. Like, it's conservation in and of itself can be a grim topic. If you focus on the grim, you kind of get to the what's the point phase, and nobody wants that. We don't want that. Like, we have to be able to celebrate the really awesome stuff that we're doing here in zoos, overseas, outside of zoos, like all of those kinds of things. So, Thanks for putting us out there.
Yeah.
Celebrate the wins. We have a win right now. We got to
Yes.
celebrate the wins.
Heck
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
I'm looking forward to the update in about a year
I
from
know.
now.
Yeah,
Can't
I'll be
wait.
ready. I'll be
And
ready.
listeners at home, if you're listening to this, you're like, what the heck is a sihek? I don't know what a kingfisher is. Just Google it. These birds are gorgeous. Like, I promise you, if you see these birds, it's going to make you care about them. So definitely take a look. But
Maybe Aimee can get us some photos we can share for the Instagram story too.
Oh,
Just put some
yeah.
extra ones
Oh,
out
yeah.
there. Yeah.
I definitely can.
We
I've
want to
got
see
a
these
few.
babies.
I've got a few.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day.
yeah, until next time, take care.